Have you seen Star Wars?
Some of you, and by some, I include myself, may be too young to remember the Star Wars game called Rogue Squadron. It was released in 1998 on Nintendo 64, and it was set between Episodes 4, A New Hope, and Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, and it began 6 months after the Battle of Yavin, and shows the missions set during the formation of Rogue Squadron, led by Luke Skywalker and Wedge Antilles. Of course, there were a lot of expanded universe stories that continued the Rogue Squadron story, but since those are now called Legends, Lucasfilm can now use the Rogue Squadron format, story, what have you, and tell that story in any fashion that they want. And according to LRMonline, they're saying there's a Rogue Squadron animated series in the works at Lucasfilm. Right now it's still in development, which means nothing official and no production planned right now, but it does mean Lucasfilm is really considering this potential series, and from the source at LRM, they said that it has legs and is building steam inside Lucasfilm. And I would suspect that something like this, if it gains some traction and momentum in the Star Wars fandom, if there's a demand for it, I could see Lucasfilm meeting that demand since they're already in early development for this series. I have to admit, this is a surprising move by Lucasfilm if it does end up happening. I prefer the timeline between Episodes 4, A New Hope, and Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, a lot more than the 19-year gap between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope that's constantly explored by the new Star Wars content these days. Going between Episodes 4 and 5 offers a little bit more storytelling opportunities about how the Empire dealt with the destruction of the Death Star, and since Luke just destroyed the Death Star, I'd imagine there's a lot more momentum in the rebellion that sparked hope in the rebels. What I am a little concerned with is this series being animated. Now, I'm not saying go all out on live action and make this entire series live action, but I think most of the space battles in Star Wars that I personally love are in the films and not really in the shows. I know Clone Wars had a lot of space battles and they were okay, but the space battles in Rebels were few and far between on being iconic. I can remember about 4 space battles in Rebels and one of them was good. Now, I've not seen a single episode of Star Wars Resistance because I often forgot that it was actually a show or even a thing in the Star Wars universe, but if I remember correctly, it had something to do with the starfighter stuff, a lot of that, I really don't know. So maybe if the space battles and combat in that show were good, Rogue Squadron could follow the same route. With that said, this Rogue Squadron series would mostly be space combat based, and since it would be animated and every episode would likely have some type of dogfight or space battle, and I'm fine with that concept, but honestly I'm not sure how engaging that would be for the casual audience or even myself if it's animated. You can still pull off powerful space combat moments in Star Wars, we've seen it with some of the new films, but shows like The Mandalorian haven't really relied on space combat, and it's been universally praised. And I think that largely reflects on the characters and the story of The Mandalorian, and that brings my point to Rogue Squadrons. If the characters and the story in Rogue Squadrons were characters we care about, and the story about them is really engaging, then I see no problem with it being set around space combat, since it would be us watching these characters overcome obstacles instead of a show glorifying space battles in Star Wars, simply because simple-minded fans love the big boom booms in the sky. But it would be nice to also see a pilot from the Empire defect into the Rebellion, like the story from Rogue Squadron, giving us a little bit more insight into the Empire during that time. This really is a selfish thing for me to say, but I hope this is not a kid's show, and I'm almost willing to bet it will be. The Clone Wars was really popular when I was a kid, but it also expanded into the teenage and young adult audience, and even a lot of adults in general liked that show. I don't think we can say the same thing for Rebels and Resistance, which both were clearly geared towards a children-based audience and even preteens. Sure, a lot of us adults watched Rebels and some even enjoyed it, but if this is just going to be another kids show, I can see it going under the radar by many Star Wars fans, kind of like Star Wars Resistance did. But if Lucasfilm was smart, you would think they'd geared this towards a broad audience of Star Wars fans, and primarily the older ones even older than me, and probably you. Rogue Squadron came out in 1998, so most people who remember this game with fond memories are going to be people born in the 80s and 90s, and I'd be willing to bet most of these people are huge fans of the original trilogy. And going for the nostalgic feeling of returning to the successful Rogue Squadron game that many Star Wars fans grew up on, while also setting it in the original trilogy era, may just be the perfect setting for another smash hit show for the Star Wars community like the Clone Wars was. So maybe Lucasfilm will be smart and will gear this towards a older audience, knowing that they're the ones who grew up on this game and this story. With that said, I hope for fans of Rogue Squadron that this show does happen. It doesn't need to be more than 2 or 3 seasons, but I think it would be a good timeline to explore. I just hope they focus on making memorable characters and story instead of only relying on space combat to sell us on this show. But tell me your thoughts below. Have you played Rogue Squadrons and do you like it? Do you want a Rogue Squadron animated series? Leave your comments below. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe because it does help out the channel. I'm Star Wars Only. I will see you all next time, and may the Force be with you always.